Hello, and welcome to Encouraging Leadership, conversations that mobilize today's women leaders, with your host, Ann Miner. Meet leaders who share their observations, knowledge, insight, and perspectives to mobilize you to apply your own leadership in business and in life. Here's your host, Ann Miner.
Welcome to Encouraging Leadership, conversations to mobilize today's women leaders. My guest today is Adam Mortimer. Now, he uses the latest technologies to help clients discover and overcome their limiting beliefs so they can stop unconscious self-sabotage and live the life of their dreams. Adam, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Ann. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, I know that you had to get up super early this morning to join us, so I particularly give you a round of applause for that. Now, Adam,
thank you.
How does understanding the mind help you become a better leader?
Well, thank you. First of all, I believe that if we are really going to become great leaders, we have to understand who we are. And I have a saying, the sad thing today is more people know more about their smartphones than their smart minds. And when we truly understand who we are, how we work, what gets us to act, why do we do what we do, when we understand ourselves and understand how the brain works, we can more readily influence other people as well. And we can understand, what keeps them stuck, what are some common roadblocks that people run into, how do you motivate people, how do you speak to that motivation and get them to act. And so I think in a huge way it makes a much better leader.
Interesting. Well, I think we would all agree that with your comment about smartphones, knowing our smartphones better than our smart minds.
Well, we're starting them young now. I've got a 2-year-old, and I'll tell you, she's a wizard on the smartphone. She's doing things. I'm going, what in the world? How'd you do that? And she's like, yeah, Dad, I got this. She's awesome.
But can
so
she
we're starting them young
you?
now.
Does she have
No.
the vocabulary to explain it to you, though? Yeah.
No, not at all.
Well, tell us about some of the common limiting beliefs that people have and how you help them to overcome them.
Yeah, you bet. So some of the most common limiting beliefs, and this is whether you're male or female, it seems to be across the board, and I've coached about 4,000 people in 85 countries. So just kind of give you an idea of the pool that I'm personally pulling from. The most common beliefs are I'm not good enough has to be number one. And you'll see that manifest in a lot of different ways. People will say things like, well, I just don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough love in my relationship. I don't have enough this. I don't have enough that. But one thing that I've learned is that all limiting beliefs have its roots in self-image. It's how we see ourselves. And people go, oh, I know when you make a big statement like that, people go, well, wait a minute, how does that work? Well, I often tell people, I say, imagine for a moment that you were the president of Canada, or the Prime Minister of Canada, President of the United States. Yeah, we're used to presidents here, so I usually say, so imagine you're the President of the United States, and I have people go, and so I get them to imagine that, and they go, okay. So I say, now how would that influence your behaviors, your thoughts, and your actions? They go, well, that would influence everything. They go, oh, so the way you see yourself influences virtually every area of your thoughts and your behaviors. Well, yeah, I'd agree with that. Then I ask a very profound question. When was the last time you, number one, took an inventory of how you've been identifying yourself, right, defining self, and when was the last time you challenged that belief? So my goal is always with women is to help them to see themselves as limitless daughters of the divine, with unlimited potential. That's my goal. I want them to see themselves as limitless, no limits. They can do anything, they can be anything, they can have anything. And so that's a big part. So I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I don't deserve it. Those are all very common limiting beliefs. You've got some symptoms of limiting beliefs like procrastination, and I think this one's common. I see this a lot in women, is the limiting belief of, or the symptom of a limiting belief anyway, procrastination. And I think one of the big reasons for it is perfectionism. Do you see that one as well, Anne? Among a lot of women leaders, is they want it to be perfect. It's got to be perfect before I do it. And so they don't do it.
Yes, and perfectionism can be a huge, I don't know if we want to call it an albatross, but something that weighs you down. And I can remember as a young woman being told that perfectionism was, a terrible fault that I had, and that I needed to learn, and I agree, I needed to learn what was good enough, and to learn how to allocate time, energy, money, attention on the basis of how important is this? Is this a life decision that's going to have impact for decades to come? Or is this something that just needs to get done for now? So I agree, and it can be paralyzing, absolutely paralyzing for women. I suspect for some men too, but definitely for women, that they have to get it perfect, or they have to be perfect. You may have come across the study that I believe was done by Hewlett-Packard, or HP as they're known today, in which women and men were both given qualifications for a position, and there were 10 of them. The women looked at the list of 10, and even if they could check off 9 of the 10, they would not apply because they didn't feel qualified. The men, on the other hand, as soon as they got to 6, they were in. Yes, I can do this. Whatever I don't know, I can learn it on the job.
Yeah.
And that was so revealing.
Yeah, that is. That's very interesting. I haven't heard of that study. That's very fascinating. It's interesting. Yeah, that mentality, and that, one of the things that I used, I remember one of my mentors, because I struggled with perfectionism myself, and I would constantly be, it's got to be perfect. It's not good enough. I got to keep working on it until it's just right. And I realized the brain is a master at distraction, and it uses things like perfectionism to distract us from accomplishing our goals. And people go, well, why would we do that? Well, it goes back to the way our brain has evolved, and our brain wanting to protect us from things like that. So it often, I'll give you an example of this. I had a client that came in, and I coach people with how to write books, as well as coaching them in life coaching and high-performance coaching. And this man, he came in and he said, Adam, I just don't know if I can be an author. I mean, he was really putting off things. He was really procrastinating. And he said, well, why is that? And I said, well, why is that? And he goes, well, I'm a lawyer, and I just don't see myself as an author. And so I started to talk with him, and I said, isn't it interesting how you are so focused on being a lawyer? Often we define ourselves, and we have this one thing. This is our one occupation. And I see people do this all the time. And it really limits them. It's like, well, I'm this, I can't be an artist. I'm this, I can't be a teacher. I'm this, I can't be an author or a coach. And that's what he was doing. And he goes, so why is it that I'm in the space of distraction all the time? And I said, well, do you see what's happening here? You have defined self as I am a lawyer. Now, there's a part of the body, and we call it this reptilian part of the brain. It's a very old brain, evolutionarily speaking. But anyway, this reptilian brain is there to protect you as you define it. So he defined himself as a lawyer. The author was a threat to his identity. So the moment he's being threatened, you ever seen the movie Jurassic Park?
Mm-hmm. I did.
You know where they have the two raptors. There's velociraptors, and the guy says to him, he goes, look, the way they hunt is one will stand in front of you and distract you while the other one will get you from the side. This reptilian part of the brain, this prehistoric part of the brain, is a master of distraction. So often when we have something that is outside of our comfort zone, outside of our self-identity, all of a sudden this brain kicks in and goes, oh, I know a few tricks up my sleeve, and it starts distracting you with procrastination. It distracts you with, oh, look, the shiny object syndrome. Oh, look, this looks more fun. I'm going to do this. Or we start to multitask or jump from task to task. This is another thing we talk about in coaching, is this myth of multitasking. I call it a myth because there's actually a study, a test you can take that will tell you if you are good at multitasking or not. And I have yet to have anybody pass this test. And I've given this to lots of people.
Yeah.
So I'll have to share that with your audience sometime, and they can take the test and see if they pass it.
Well, I can tell you, I know I would not. You come to learn that you can do one thing at a time, and all you're doing, at least in my experience, all you're doing with multitasking is kind of switching from task to task very, very rapidly. You're not doing them simultaneously. And so I hope that fits with what you know about it, about human beings as well.
Exactly. Focus on one thing at a time until successful. That's the key. And when people do that, they do really well. When they don't. But as far as procrastination, the saying that I wanted to share with the audience, and you can, as far as perfectionism rather, is I would rather an imperfect today than a perfect never.
Mm. Yes, agreed. So how do you get people to overcome that or set it aside?
Well, it goes really deep, and so we do a lot of subconscious work with people. And one of the so let's say somebody comes in and goes, Adam, I have this belief that I'm not enough, and they're really struggling with that belief. Okay, so what do we do? Well, the first thing, we identify it, and then we rate it. And what we're rating is the emotional charge associated with the belief. Emotions are a key driver of human behavior. You could ask young people why they do what they do, and often they'll say, I don't know, I just felt like it. And it can be very frustrating for parents. I'm the parent of 4 kids. I've got 2 9-year-old identical twin boys. And one of them will punch the other one. They know how to trigger dad, right? So they punches him, and he goes, and I just go, oh, why did you do that? And he goes, I don't know. I just felt like it. And in the beginning, that answer really frustrated me, but I actually began to realize he was telling me the truth. He felt like it. He was acting on impulse. Of course, adults are supposed to overcome that, right? But you look around at the world today, it's not really happening too well. We're not doing too good. Being a very good example for our kids. Yeah, that's a whole other conversation. But we do. We are driven by behavior. You look at the stock market, for example. It's driven by 2 main emotions, which are fear and greed. Those 2 emotions are what accounts for the ups and downs of the market. If the stock market was logical and rational, you'd have any 14-year-old young girl with programming skills would be able to figure out a way to make billions of dollars in the market by, it being very predictable. But we just don't see that happening. It's because it's not predictable, because it's being driven by human emotion, not by logic and reason.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we do, once we identify it, I have them rate it on a scale from 0 to 10. I say, how strongly do you feel that you're not good enough? And they'll say, well, and if they're thinking about it too long, I say, well, you're thinking way too long. I need you to give me a gut-level response. Give me the first answer that pops into your mind. There's actually been some really powerful studies, if you want to look one up. It's called the 7-second experiment. It was done by Russian scientists, and they found that they could predict a full 7 seconds in advance what button someone was going to push before they were consciously aware of it. And they did this by having the man in an MRI machine looking at what regions of the brain were lighting up. So we have to understand that there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes below conscious awareness. So when that answer kind of pops into your mind and you think you're just making it up, you think it's coming out of nowhere, it's already gone through many, many levels of the brain, many filters. We often say that the conscious mind is the least informed and last to know. It's the least informed and last to know. Let me give you an example of this real quick, and I promise I'm going to get to how to clear, Anne. So I know you're the question there, but it's bringing up some good things that I have to share to set this up.
Yes.
Okay, so I want you to, Anne, if you're willing to do this, I want you to imagine that you're in a white, let's say a white field. Okay, so a white, beautiful field, and there's snow on the ground. As far as the eyes can see, it's not too hard for the Canadians to imagine this. It is a little bit harder for my South American friends in Venezuela or Colombia or some of those other countries. They go, snow? What's snow? It's like, oh boy. But if you imagine it as far as the eye can see, and all that snow, and then you see this beautiful person, and she's walking along in this white, beautiful, flowing dress, and suddenly a train comes out of nowhere. It's a white train and blasting the horn, and you're yelling for her to get out of the way, but it's too late. Train smacks into her, and everything just very magically just turns to silk. The train turns to silk, she turns to silk, everything just, you even look down, you're wearing white silk. So go ahead and say the word silk 5 times, Anne. Silk, 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 silk.
Silk, 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 silk.
What do cows drink?
Milk. No.
Okay. So there we go. Okay,
Water.
You got yourself. That was good. All right, so here's the metaphor I share with people, is how often in life is the correct answer water? But because of our programming, because of our conditioning, because of our environment, we're saying milk. And it's sabotaging our relationships. It's sabotaging our health. It's sabotaging our chances of becoming a leader and leading and inspiring other women, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of our conditioning and programming. And unless we become conscious of what's happening, I just want to be really clear, unless you are aware of what's happening in the subconscious, you will live a life of struggle. I mean, it's very simple. There are penalties one must pay if they do not understand the rules of the mind. And one of them is ill health. You'll have struggling relationships. You'll have a lack of peace. You'll have more doubt and fear in your life. You will not have as much emotional control. On the other hand, if you understand it, there's peace, there's good health, there's more money in your life, there's better relationships, there's all those good things that we want. So it really is, to me, it's a matter of life and death, understanding how we work, living a great life or living that mediocre, playing small, that kind of a life. Okay. So let's get back to Anne's question, because it's a good question. How do we clear it? So we've identified it. We've rated it. They went with the first number that popped into their mind. Then we actually utilize the way the brain naturally works. You see, there's 3 layers of the brain. And I don't want to get too nerdy on you here, Anne, but this is important. I feel this is really important to understand. Mm-hmm. So there's 3 brains. You've got the reptilian brain, which is the oldest brain. It's considered, and we can see this in reptiles. If you look at reptiles, they do have that same brain that is inside of us. So we do have that very, very similar anyway. So there's the reptilian brain, and then there's the limbic brain. This is where emotions are at, and women obviously have a very, very developed limbic brain. Their ability to have compassion and sympathize, wonderful, beautiful strength. And then the neocortex, which neo means new. So it is the most evolved part of the brain, most advanced part of the brain. So if you look at the way the brain's hardwired, the optic nerve plugging into the reptilian brain is 50 times stronger than the auditory nerve. And so now here's the thing about the 3 brains. Guess which one, Anne, is the decision maker?
I'd like to say the neocortex.
That's what we'd like to say, but what does your gut tell you?
Reptilian.
It is the reptilian brain. Believe it or not, it's the one that's... Now, the neocortex does have a vote. It just doesn't have, it's kind of... Imagine this reptilian brain's been here forever. It's like, you newbie think you're going to come in here and tell me how to run the show? I don't think so. It's the reptilian brain. And the more we can learn how to influence and stimulate that reptilian brain, the more control we're going to have over our thoughts and our behaviors. So we said it operates off of visual. It's very, very visual. And so if we could have people visualize, and also this part of the brain, the part that we're influencing, works off of metaphor. Metaphor is incredibly powerful. For the written language, for example, we told story. It was people would dance and tell stories to pass down information. And that's how we remembered things. And it was a really important thing that we remembered these songs and dances and stories. So we're naturally hardwired to remember stories very well. And so what you do, I'll have the client, I'll just say, okay, tell me the first object that pops into your mind that represents I'm not good enough. And she'll say, well, I don't know. And I say, just anything that pops in your head. There's no right or wrong answer here. Okay, an apple. Okay. I want you to imagine that apple represents I'm not good enough. Can you imagine that? Yeah, I can imagine that. Okay, so I want you to imagine that apple in a small black and white TV. Can you picture that? Yeah, I can picture that. Now, small and black and white, there's a reason I do this, is because typically when we take the 3-dimension off of it and turn it to 2-dimension, take the color out of it, it'll actually turn down the emotion. Would you like me to demonstrate this?
I would.
Okay. So, Anne, can you tell me a time in your life when your emotions were the highest, when you felt the very best in your life?
Well, there was how much detail do you want me to give you?
Just real briefly, 30 seconds.
Okay. Bright, sunny day, clear blue sky, crisp air, and I was walking into the hospital where I was caring for my father. Okay,
beautiful. So this is a really powerful experience for you, right? It's a great memory. My question is, how often do you remember this? How often do you think about this?
Not very often.
Not very often. Did you know that by simply remembering good memories, you can recondition your mind for a higher energy, a higher emotional state? Through the science of neuroplasticity, every time you learn something new or you reinforce those good memories, you literally create the state. So we'll go there. You're in that space. And tell me, when was the energy the highest in that moment? So maybe give me just a 5-second slice of that memory where you felt your emotions were the very highest.
Well, as I was thinking that I had solved a problem. We had a problem, specifically that my father's vocal cords were not cooperating when he tried to speak. And I had found, with the help of a pharmacist, an aerosol that was intended to lubricate his vocal cords. And I was going to be, and it actually worked. And I was anticipating that he would be able to speak to me.
Very cool. And so you did that and it worked and he was able to speak then?
Yes.
Wow, that's very cool. That's like miraculous, right? It's like, wow, you talk. That'd be a very powerful experience. So as you're in that experience, I want you to notice the brightness of the colors. And I want you to actually turn, so kind of notice the energy on a scale from 0 to 10. How strong is it? 10 is the strongest, 0 is the weakest. What number would you give it?
Oh, it's 10.
A 10, okay. So I want you to go into that memory, and I want you to make the colors even brighter. Okay, so just like you turn up the brightness on a TV, the colors get brighter, more vivid, more real, more intense. And as you turn it brighter, does the energy go up or down for you?
Well, it goes past where it was, higher.
So it goes up. Okay, good. So now, as you go into that experience, I want you to imagine everything's even larger. Okay, so like the size of an IMAX theater, everything's very, very large. Everything's big. Right, imagine that. Does the energy go up or down for you?
I'm not sure about that one. Now I feel a bit lost in it.
Feel a little bit lost in it? Okay. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to imagine, by the way, there's no right or wrong answer here. Everybody's mind is different. That's 100% okay. So I want you to imagine that we shrink the image down to just a picture, and we take the color away from it. It's very small. I want you to imagine it outside of you now, outside of your body, and it's just a small black and white picture that you're looking at.
Not the same at all.
Yes, it's not the same at all. Isn't that amazing? By using some very simple techniques, imagine now if you had a very negative memory that you didn't see. What most people do when they're imagining or thinking about these negative experiences in their lives, they imagine them in bright, big, bold colors, and they're in their face, and they're playing them over and over and over on repeat. And they condition their mind for anxiety, condition for depression, condition for a lot of negative things that we see all over nowadays. If they learned how to simply turn it off, black and white, two-dimensional, bring it outside of your body, it turns down the emotion and thereby giving you control. Now, the fun thing about this, the more you do this, you build a habit. And before long, you don't even have to think about it. It just naturally is. Naturally, you feel good. And naturally, you're able to turn off the energy. So anyway, that was a long answer to why we put it in a small black and white TV. Okay? So we take the apple, put it in a small black and white TV, and we have them imagine it getting smaller and smaller until it just disappears. And then I say, how do you feel? And they go, oh, wow, that does feel better. Wow, that's so what number would you give it? Well, I was a 10, and I would say like a 5 now. And then I would repeat it. Now, there's a number of different metaphors that I use. I'd say, okay, imagine the apple on a balloon and watch that balloon float away. Again, you can imagine it black and white, and that balloon gets smaller and smaller until it's gone. You watch the apple float away in a river till it's gone, or you watch it, put it on a boat and watch it float away till it's gone. I'm using all these different metaphors and visuals to really influence this part of the brain that's controlling a lot of why we do what we do. So once that energy is turned off, I say, so how do you feel about that now? They go, wow, Adam, I don't feel that anymore. Well, how does that feel? And the most common response is, I feel lighter. I feel lighter, like physically they feel light. Like this energy, this weight was lifted off of them. And then I ask a question. Just intuitively speaking, how do you feel this is going to impact your life? Most common response, again, would be, Adam, this is going to change everything. So what's really fascinating, and as I've done this experiment with a lot of people, probably, 2,000 people that I've done this exact experiment on, where I'll have them state their limiting belief, like I'm not good enough. And I'll say, tell me the first thought that pops into your mind. Remember, the conscious mind, least informed, last to know. Mm-hmm. And so they'll say, well, first thought that pops in my mind is, when I think of I'm not good enough, first thought that pops in my mind is a picture of my dad's face. Well, why is that? Well, my dad always told me I wasn't good enough. My dad was abusive. My dad did this. It doesn't have, it'd be things like, well, it's true. That's what pops up in my mind. Those are really common responses. And so once we do the clearing, I say, so tell me, what's the first thought that pops in mind now? Most common response is either A, nothing. They go, I don't know, it's blank. Nothing pops up in my mind anymore. Or B, they'll say things like, it's not true anymore.
Well, that is so powerful. And what a great gift to give someone who is holding themselves back from their potential. Now, Adam, would you believe that we are just about out of time? So I know that we need to share with our listeners two things. One, how they can get in touch with you if they would like to go further in this conversation. And two, your words of advice to mobilize our women leaders.
Yeah, you bet. So first thing, how to get in touch. I can give my phone number, 800-743-9833, extension 6108, or you could visit www.achievetoday.com, and you can get in contact with us that way if you want coaching or even just a strategy session. You want to do a free clearing and just see how it works. And I always tell my clients, look, you don't have to believe me. I don't expect anyone to believe me, but I do expect you to be open enough and to experiment with it to see if it works. And you'll be very surprised by what you find, by what you discover. So my piece of advice, number one, realize the amazing power that you have for good. Realize that you are a daughter of the divine. What does that mean? You're a child of the King. You have unlimited potential. You've been blessed with an amazing, beautiful mind. And you have the ability and capacity to do a lot of good in the world, to share and to show compassion, to bring a new type of leadership that I think the world is ready for. A new type of leadership that is more cooperative, it involves people more, and a type of leadership that isn't haphazard but uses the science of the mind to get results, really understanding with love and compassion why we are how we are and how to inspire us to transform our lives. And with that, I just want to give everybody a big hug because I'm a hugger. So I'll hug you all, and I'm so excited to be here, and I'm thankful for Ann for inviting me here, so thanks for having me.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Adam, and I just want you to repeat that phone number one more time, please.
Yeah, you bet. So it's 800-743-9833, and my direct extension is 6108.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Adam, and for sharing your wisdom and your insights to the power of the mind. Listeners, join us again next week, Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on Bold Radio for more conversations to mobilize today's women leaders.
Thank you for listening to Encouraging Leadership. To learn more about our host, Ann Miner, and the Acacia Institute, please visit acaciainstitute.com. Join us next week at the same time, 1 p.m. Eastern, for more Encouraging Leadership. In the meantime, be courageous.